I'm Sangeeta Waldron, communications professional and author of What Will Your Legacy Be? And welcome to the Legacy Makers podcast, which I do with my co-host, Giles Trendle. Giles, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Giles, and my background is in media, and I was formerly the managing director of Al Jazeera English, and now, among other things, doing this podcast in which we are holding conversations with people who are doing positive things around the issue of climate change.
So on that note, Giles, who do we have joining us for this episode?
So in this episode, we're interviewing Lou Albano. She's a Filipino journalist with GMA News, which is one of the largest networks in the Philippines. She's the managing director of the lifestyle section, which is particularly, among other things, related to reporting climate and environment. And interestingly, she wrote an article about the Catholic Church and climate change, and it was published just a few days before the passing of Pope Francis. So I think it's an interesting time to interview her and see what she thinks about the Catholic Church and climate change. Of course, Pope Francis released this, I guess it was like a big document, a big report. It was called Laudato Si, which means praised be to you. And it was very much his thinking around the environment and climate. And from a religious perspective, how the earth is as he said, our common home. So although I'm not Catholic, and I think, Sangeeta, you're not Catholic, I think it's very interesting to hear how faith-based systems like the Catholic Church are addressing the climate challenge.
Yeah, I don't think we could have had a better guest for right now. So it's a really timely conversation. So let's speak to Lou.
Hello, everybody, and we're delighted today to be joined by Lou Albano, a Filipino journalist. And Lou, thank you very much for joining us. And I guess the first question is, you wrote an article, actually it was published just a few days before Pope Francis passed away. And it was about the connection between Catholicism and climate. And of course, the Philippines being, I believe, it's the third biggest country of Catholicism in terms of size and population. Can you just explain what was behind writing that article, and what do you think is the link between Catholicism in this case and climate change?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I went to Baku, Azerbaijan for COP29, and one of the things that really struck me there was the presence of the religion, of faith. That was something that really surprised me. I was not expecting their presence in a very political event. And so the Philippines being such a like the third largest Catholic nation in the world, I got introduced to all these, especially to Bishop Jerry Alminaza, and so and we got to talking. I got an interview slot with him, and like I was so surprised at how well versed he was, not just about faith and about Laudato Si, but really about the more technical issues like climate finance and solar energy. So COP was such a monster event to cover. I was not able to release all those materials I had of Catholicism and climate. So I thought, okay, let me save this for a better time. And Holy Week is when we really, it's such a slow news season. And I thought that's the perfect time to release something like Catholicism, a story on Catholicism and climate action. It's such strange bedfellows, right? So
Yeah, it is. And you mentioned Laudato Si. Could you just explain to people who don't know, might not know what that is? What
okay,
was
so
Laudato Si?
yeah, so in 2015, the late great Pope Francis published Laudato Si. It is the Catholic Church's first encyclical about caring for our common home, and it was there that he really drove home the point about the climate crisis. Previously, there were, some letters, some nudges towards about climate crisis and taking care of the environment. But I think this Laudato Si is really the first teaching of the Catholic Church um, that really made the whole population, the entire religion, like really look at, take climate action short of the law. It's really one of my interviewees for the story. Her name is also Lou Arsenio. She was telling me that after Laudato Si, um all the dioceses of the Catholic Church started having, started establishing climate desks all over the world. Previously, climate was just lumped together with all the other social issues like gender, like poverty, like children. But because of Laudato Si, because of Pope Francis Laudato Si, um, parishes, churches, and dioceses started establishing their own like separate desks or ministries for the environment. So, um, okay, in the Laudato Si, he really spelled it out. Like he rebuked he rebuked one of the most like long-held explanations or beliefs that we got from the Bible, which is that man had domination over the rest of creation. According to Pope Francis, that is a wrong reading of the Bible because we're all interrelated and earth is our common home. So um he echoes that document, that particular point of the document. I thought is quite interesting because you hear this from philosophers, and now I hear it from artists, and it's really an acknowledgement about how we are not separate from nature. We are nature and humanity is one and the same. So I thought that was really, really Pope Francis was ahead of his time, I think.
You're absolutely right there, Lou. He was ahead of his time, and I've also been. I mean, when he passed away, I'm not Catholic, but I got caught up into this whole sort of how ahead and pioneering he was. And
Mhm.
he also recognized indigenous communities as having wisdom and something that should be acknowledged, even
Mhm.
within the Catholic faith.
Mhm.
And I thought that was really interesting because
Mhm.
if you look at organizations around the world, not everyone gives due respect to indigenous communities.
I I was at one IPCC um press briefing. I think it was 2023 or 2024, and the scientists by that time, so 2023, 2022, 2024, the scientists had acknowledged that indigenous people's wisdom, there's something to be learned from
Yeah.
indigenous peoples, right, with how we take care of the environment. So they're really not discounting their wisdom, and like you mentioned, Pope Francis already was already there. They beat him
Yeah.
to it. So it's amazing, man.
So up till now, climate change has been spoken about in scientific terms, in political terms, in economic terms. Do you think there is space and room for climate change to be spoken about in spiritual and religious terms?
Most definitely. Like I was mentioning at COP, there was a faith pavilion in all the country pavilions. I that really took me aback, and like seeing all the representatives from different religions just talking about their role and what they can do about climate change. I think there's really space for this kind of this manner of tackling this planetary crisis. I This morning, thank you for your questions because it really made me, it really made me look inward and looked at my notes. And this morning, I went through an old recording from the OCJN, the Oxford Climate Journalism Network, of which I am a part of. We During our time, we were very fortunate to talk with Dr. Salim Hook. He passed away in 2022,
Yeah.
but he was the director of the International Center for Climate Change, and our seminar with him dealt with climate justice, and he really drove home the point that climate change is immoral and unjust. He was saying something about climate justice. The main thesis of the climate justice is to correct something that is wrong, and the wrong is that the rich people is causing problems on the poor people, right? So, it really at the end of the day, it really is a moral question. It is I think it's a manifestation of corporate greed and and really injustice. So there is room for such discussions, especially for a country like the Philippines, where majority is Catholic, right? So yeah.
I just want to ask you, Lou, because you've actually introduced the Philippines so well, because that was my next question.
Yes.
Can you just maybe, we're in sync. Can you tell us a little bit about what the population in the Philippines is facing with regards to the climate crisis?
So we're at the forefront of climate crisis, right? Like Southeast Asia, they're saying Southeast Asia is really the forefront, but like during what happened last year really demonstrated the point. In 6 weeks, the Philippines was battered by 6 typhoons. Sorry, in 4 weeks, we were battered by 6 typhoons,
Wow.
4 of which were happening simultaneously. I mean, that is really quite an anomaly. This is what we face. Every year, it just gets worse and worse. And I also don't understand what, like our responses to climate change. We're not getting any better, and what's happening is getting worse and worse, right? So this is something that we every year there's a tragedy. I mean, it's insane. I believe the world really took notice when Haiyan battered our country and what killed about 7,000 people. That was in 2013, and from then on it just got worse and worse and worse.
And so what's the weather like there now? Is it intense heat, or is it?
Well, it's summer, so
Yeah.
we're baking. um yeah, I think it was last year also that we faced the brunt of El Nino during summer. So our heat indexes were going up to 50 degrees Celsius. It was very warm. And the response back then was that they had to so much class cancellation. So it was the students who were really feeling it, and even government workers were asked to stay home because it was just so hot. Thankfully, in that respect, we learned. So this year they started classes early so that children will not have to bear the brunt of the heat. Um, so at least heat wise, we're getting better with the responses, but it's really the typhoons that we need to be better at.
Yeah, very tough. Giles.
Yeah, I remember, Leo, when I was managing director at Al Jazeera, we often reported the terrible typhoons, and the flood. There was a lot of flooding that would come from it, people and houses being washed away, as well as the typhoons. What are the other manifestations of climate change, and how is the government or governments, whether national or regional or local, what are they trying to do to mitigate and adapt to this?
I think another manifestation is every summer um we really have like an energy crisis. So there would be blackouts, rotating blackouts, because we are running out of energy supply, right? So, and because it's just too hot, everybody's air conditioning's switched on. So that's like uh that's another manifestation, I think. What the government is doing, I so I was talking with our representatives about energy transition, and apparently they are trying to do something about it. They're trying their very best to switch us up to solar energy, but because a lot of our energy distributors are private, that's so much nuances. The process is quite slow. Um, so that's one. Local governments are slowly the local governments are taking heed. They're realizing. I think the COVID pandemic also helped the local governments and even the people realize that they are really the first line of defense. So so when the rainy season starts coming in, then they already know that they need to clear the trash, they need to fix the drainage to prevent flooding. Over at Eastern Visayas, which is where Tacloban is, they're really they're quite serious about their mangroves so that it'll prevent storm surges and building seawalls. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lou, I want to just go back to something you said earlier when you were describing the Catholic Church and how it's really taking climate change seriously.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that there were these desks within the Catholic faith
Mm.
sort of tackling the climate crisis. And it
Yeah.
made me think it's a little bit like the UN. It
I-
sort of in its response to this. And I've also been reading and researching, and I was thinking the Catholic faith right now is quite like the UN in the sense there are very few multilateral organizations in the world right now
Mm.
that have the capability to tackle the climate crisis.
I- You know what?
And I just wondered what you thought.
You might be right. I think you might have a point there. I was looking at the funeral of Pope Francis and the inauguration of Pope Leo, and all the leaders of the world, right, were there, and just trying Zelensky
Yeah.
and Zelensky and Trump met, and it's just I think you might have a point there. They're really I would like to think they're really working towards trying to help and trying to get people to move to act for the climate. I can only speak locally. Like, I'm quite impressed to hear that, for instance, the Catholic Church in the Philippines took part in the 10 million solar rooftop challenge. So yeah, it's quite I don't know, it's quite political, I think. They know their power. I feel like the Catholic Church really in the Philippines have its power, and I'm glad they're aware of it, and I'm glad they're using it for the better.
For the good. Yeah. Giles, you actually said something the other day about the appointment of Pope Leo, and that it's actually a very brave move to have, and quite a powerful move to have a pope who's got American heritage
Mm.
behind him, and whether that's a political, I don't know whether you can call it a political response to what's happening in the world right now.
Mm. Yeah, I just wondered if it was a response to Mr. Trump being in power and having an American who can, I don't know, handle and face up to Mr. Trump and the politics of Trumpism, and maybe continue Pope Francis's legacy, among other things around climate, because obviously from the Trump side, we're getting a lot of climate disinformation. And I guess, Lou, this leads on to my interest in COP. Now, you are a journalist, and last year you were a COP fellow of the Earth Journalism Network, and so you attended COP in Baku, Azerbaijan. And I'm interested to hear what was your experience of COP.
My God, it's I haven't unpacked. So it's 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks of Big Bang Theory. Like there's so much going on. You're on the ground reporting 2 weeks, and central to your reportage is your local country, but then so many other things is going on, right? So before COP, I really consider myself a newbie, a new climate, like really new to the scene. So I didn't know any people. I didn't know any people from our Department of Energy or Department of Environment, Natural Resources. So like I was like a month before COP, I was really studying and just trying to make contacts, and it was really intense. So I didn't know what to expect. Like the sheer scale of it was just it's quite something. And then the the venue is so large, so like you're just constantly walking. Like I was doing 15,000 steps a day, and so that's the physical endeavor. I broke a shoe at one point early on.
Yeah.
I thought I was, and then so like I consider before COP, I considered myself like a new climate journalist, right? And then it was, COP 29 famous as the finance COP. So imagine like that's like a two-layer thing of trying to learn and trying to establish contacts, and just like business terms scare me. So so yeah, I really studied hard for it.
Mm.
I thought I was gonna
Lou,
go home. I thought I was gonna go home really inspired, like just to see people, coming together, like seeing the world coming together to fight for our survival. But instead, I came home with a lot more perspective. Definitely
oh,
tired, no longer a newbie, but there's so much perspective there.
will you be going to this year's COP, COP 30?
That's my hope. I want to be
That's your
able
hope.
to. I want to be able to attend.
So you
And
haven't lost all hope.
Yeah, should be interesting.
do you have any expectations from this COP?
This coming COP,
Yeah.
um, it's a little exciting because Brazil, that's a great like their contingent and their their government is really working working hard to make this COP like a big one. Um, so actually, I don't know how to answer your question, but yes, I have a lot of expectations, good ones.
Good.
Because
Yeah.
in COP 29, they were saying that's really just in preparation for this particular COP, and if that COP was so huge, I can't imagine how this is going to be.
Pack extra shoes.
Yes.
So, Giles, how are we doing for time?
Yeah, should we go for our last question, Sangeeta? Do
Yeah,
you wanna ask it?
I'll ask it. So, Lou, we ask all our guests this last question. So, if you were leader of your country, what would be one of the first things you would do for humanity and for the planet in relation to the climate conversation?
So, so I've been thinking about this question over the weekend.
Yeah.
At first, I said I wanted to give everybody like seeds just to plant trees and just make sure, like, to get all like we really need nature. We're not gonna survive the climate crisis without leaning on nature. But then
Mm.
I know we cannot plant our way out of this crisis, which is caused by the burning of fossil fuels and human activity, right? And I feel like at the end of the day, and coming back to what I said earlier, that this is a manifestation of a moral problem. So I think to answer your question, I'd put a cap on wealth.
Yeah.
And I think I would include environment in the economy. Like something like a donut economics, so that we just don't keep thinking of growth, and growth every year. Like, we have to be able to contain growth within our natural environment, what it can provide us.
A very considered answer, Lou. And
I thought about it.
yeah, you've thought about it. And yeah, I'd vote for you.
Yeah, you get my vote as well.
But I also like the idea that you would, your initial idea was planting seeds. Yeah, I also like that. But then, yes, we can't plant our way out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really need to, I think we really have to rethink how we live, and also like the goals that we set up for ourselves. Like, is it really, how much more wealth do we need? I mean, not to sound like a moral do-gooder, but like, you see all the wealthy people, and like, how many more private jets do they need? So
I agree.
So
Completely
true.
agree. Well, thank you, Lou, for answering that question with so much thought and for your time. Really enjoyed chatting with you.
same
And
here.
thank you. Thank you for
Great.
being on Legacy Makers.
Thank you, Lou, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, Sangeeta, we've just heard from Lou. What are your takeaways from that?
I've got a bit of a girl crush. I think she's really cool. I really liked her. And one of the things that Lou said that kind of has stayed in my mind is about the Catholic Church having these desks, which made me think it's a lot like, or it sounds very similar to the UN, the United Nations, and how the UN has been tackling the climate crisis. So the Catholic Church could be a very powerful ally in this conversation. And it's given me hope, more hope. What about you?
I think you're right. I think, and even beyond the Catholic Church, I think faiths, if you can combine science and faith, because these faith-based systems, whether it's the Catholic Church, other churches, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the other different faith systems, you've got a lot of people who are, belonging to those systems. And if those systems can reflect concern about the planet, then you've got a lot of potential there to win people over. So I'm intrigued by how faith and science can work together here. It's fascinating.
Very much so. Well,
Okay.
that's over and out from us.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.